Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone and Kenny, and we're going to be talking about Hex, a 1980 film directed by Kuei Chih-Hung. This is sort of a chilling and occasionally sexy classic. It takes elements from the original Diabolique and weaves something into them that creates kind of a new film. And the basic premise of this movie is a woman named Sau Ying murders her abusive and deranged husband with the help of her servant, only to be plagued by visions of his ghost. But as the movie progresses and his truths are revealed, it becomes clear there's a lot more going on here. So, before we get into the plot, and again, I should say at this point, if you have not seen this movie, it's impossible for us to talk about without spoiling the details. Yeah. So we are going to spoil the plot, and if you have ever seen the original Diabolique, at the end of the film, it actually tells you, do not spoil this movie for your friends. And I think the same principle would apply to this film because it does undercut sort of the enjoyment of it. So watch the movie before you listen to this discussion, and know from this point on we're gonna spoil everything. So what did you guys think of the movie? Number one.
I enjoyed it. Like I was fully taken by surprise at the twist in the middle of the movie. I read the synopsis on IMDb, and I was like, I see what the plot's like. We'll see how the movie goes. And then like halfway through, it's like, oh wait, no, the plot, the synopsis on IMDb was completely wrong. It's like it's only describing the first half of the movie. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's not often you get movies that have so many twists and turns. I think like especially not in that time period as well, right? But then again, I can't say that I've seen that many movies from the 70s and 80s that's not like wuxia or martial arts movies. So maybe those tend to have straightforward plots. But I've definitely enjoyed the story in this one. Had to laugh a bit at this very weird sequence at the end. We can save a whole segment on the podcast on that part, I think.
the infamous ritual at the end of the movie.
Yeah, but no, I definitely enjoyed it, and I had a few jump scares in it. Nothing too bad, but I think my Skype.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this movie going in, so it was very entertaining for me. Early on I was like, it's I knew it was for our kind of our horror movie month, but I'm like, wow, this is for the first segment of it, it just seems like a straight up either drama or suspense movie. Yep. And I'm like, and there's no, when's the supernatural element coming? It's very coy about it early on, and then it does bring it in full force, but then it pulls the rug out from you again, and it's I was entertained all the way through this one. I mean, I twist was like one twist, more than was needed perhaps, but it was still fun. It's it was I don't know, what did you think of it, Brandon?
Well, I'm gonna tell you in a minute. I just want to make sure that we have both people here because there was some technical issues when Adam was speaking. Kenny, can you hear us okay?
Yes, my Skype did briefly close for some reason, but it was still, I could still hear you guys. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, all right. We might have to keep an eye on it because I noticed a little bit of... What was that, Adam?
Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. But I like this movie. I like Kuei Chih-Hung as a director in general. He's really good at building atmosphere, and he's really good at I don't know, just getting the exact tone you need for a film like this. And I think in this movie he does normally he kind of goes a little bit more over the edge than he did in this one. Like this is fairly tame compared to like say The Killer Snakes or Boxer's Omen, or other movies like that he's done. But it still has a lot of really strange stuff in it. But I like that there's sort of, he takes that basic Diabolique like story and then he like adds stuff that I think is substantially more scary to it. And then he adds that additional twist at the end, which allows for that really weird scene that we know we're going to talk about, when we get there. But I think it's a really good movie, and I really like the way that it lays all the groundwork.
I liked a lot of. I'm sorry,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I liked a lot of the haunting stuff in the middle. It had a really fun atmosphere that, as opposed to the, there were jump scares and stuff in it, but there was just stuff that was like weirdly creepy throughout it. Like the scene. I don't know. Actually, looking back on the movie now, I'm like, so based on the final twist, how do they do the stuff with the mirror and everything?
So here's the thing about all that. With the exception of the mirror scene, which would have had to have been some kind of trick on her part that she does not explain, because she does explain all of her things, all of the other stuff that was inexplainable happened within a dream, or like a person was, you know what I mean, like the scene with the abbot where he's being attacked by her in the kitchen, and then like he cuts off her arms. Yep.
No, I've been talking about with the construction. Well, the moving guys, the guys that move the furniture out. It would seem weird for it to be a dream in their case.
No, it wasn't in that scene. I think that was all supposed to really have happened, and I think that's the one scene that they don't really explain because you don't see her reflection in the mirror. I think we're supposed to assume that she was tricking him somehow. But then
you could go with the weird explanation that the twin is there tricking them, but at one point the ghost actually does show up. That would be an interesting additional twist in the movie.
Well, because there's the other thing too, is did she kill one of those movers, or because like she sort of keeps chasing him, and then we see her with like this skull face, and then blood pours out of her mouth, and you hear that sound, and it feels like a cutaway that's supposed to happen after he dies. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's what it felt like to me. But it's not. It doesn't actually show that he died. It's a very strange thing there. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that part.
But I do agree with you. I don't think that the movie does explain that scene adequately. I think there's a lot that goes on in that particular sequence.
I'm kind of okay with it not being explained. It's like I said, it adds it, because I feel like at the very end of the movie they almost, just having her explain everything at the end of the movie. Well, not everything, obviously, but I feel like that. Maybe it could have been a little more subtle there at the end. I think.
It's definitely not a subtle ending. I think we could put it in many ways. Everything from how they break down all the stuff that happened to the ritual to the final moments with Yi Hua. But I do want to cover this moving scene because there's another thing about it that's a little bit odd. It's one of the few really comedic scenes in the whole movie. Like the rest of the movie is shot. Yeah, because it's shot totally atmospheric and horror and like suspense, and everything's 100% serious. And then all of a sudden, these three movers show up, and one of them's got the cross eyes, the other one's kind of like chubby and dopey, and he wets his pants because he's afraid of a ghost. And there's just all these little moments that are a little bit slapstick-like, and I was curious how that felt to you guys, if it added something to the movie or if it just totally worked in the other direction.
The other direction for me, that was, I just thought it was ridiculous. Like, okay, so maybe because I just thought that their acting was like super hamming it up. Like the guy who pissed his pants was doing the whole my legs can't move thing, and and using his arms to lift his legs. That was just like, oh no, why would you? Oh, and the cross-eyed guy, like, I don't know, like we were talking about the mirror scene. So he has a scene where he's talking to the madam of in front of a mirror, and is like, I don't know if the fact that it was he couldn't see her in the mirror, or if he was supposed to be cross-eyed and he couldn't see properly at the mirror or something, which is why he couldn't see her reflection. But it was like, I don't know, like it took him like way too long to realize that something was wrong, and then when he realized that something was wrong, he overreacted to the 10th degree.
I think we also got to talk about the quantity of urine that was on the ground. I mean, it's
the speed at which it came out was like, wow, that's unusual dispersal method you've got there. But
fight or flight is a serious thing, right?
It's just like somebody dropped a bucket of it down there.
It was slightly red as well. I was concerned.
Yeah.
Maybe there was more to this character that we were supposed to realize based on that. But But yeah, that scene I thought was just odd in general. And I've never really quite resolved how I feel about the humor aspect of it, because on the one hand, like Kenny says, it feels like in some of these movies they do shift back and forth between different moods, but this was like the whole movie is serious and you have this one weird scene that feels like it's out of another movie. On the other hand, there is one moment where the cross-eyed guy shows up as a jump scare to collect his money, and it kind of works, even though it's really goofy.
But that actually I enjoyed. Yeah, see, I had mixed feelings about this. I thought some of it worked. But the point with the legs that Kenny brought up, that was the point where I was like, no, that's a little... They're pushing it too far with the into Abbott and Costello territory at this point. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah, there were. I like the overall idea, but I think they went too far in certain places.
And so the basic plot of this movie that's taken directly from Diabolique is that the husband is just like a lousy, violent, abusive man. He married Sau Ying for her money, and she's fallen on hard times and is ill. And I think this actually does it better than the original Diabolique. What ends up happening is a servant joins the household who's really his mistress, but when this happens, you don't know it, and he, at least it looks like he rapes the servant at one point, and then when he comes home later that evening and is angry that the servant is still there, and it's raining heavily, they drown him in this big giant vessel that's filled with water, and it's kind of actually a really cool death scene. But it turns out that this is all just a plan between him and the mistress to frighten the wife to death because she's ill, and they know that it's only going to take just so much to get her to die, and then they can inherit her property and they can marry each other and be happy. And that's basically the part that they take from Diabolique. And so I wanted to know what you guys thought of that storyline, number one. I wanted to talk about some specific things that happen within that storyline.
I thought it was good. Like it was. I don't know. I feel like the what's her name? Yua's like acting as a servant and like being abused by the master thing was too convincing for someone who's like trying to pretend. Yeah, trying to the lover pretending to be a servant who's pretending to be. I don't know. It was a bit too convincing, but. Yeah, that's fine. It added to the immersion there, I think. I was fully on board that, this poor servant, this poor family friend, not even a servant, like she was just staying to look after, the benefactor of her mother, basically. Ended up having abuse held at her, being beaten and raped, and I really felt sorry for her. So when the twist came, it was more like, oh. You bitch.
Well, and she's also like one of the most admirable characters in the movie up to that point, because she's so strident in her defense of Sau Ying, and she stands up to the husband who has just been terrible the whole time. So I agree with you. It's almost too convincing for what they're trying to do. But Adam, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was funny. I thought the early segment was very strong. But there was only one thing that was bugging me. It was something that became clear once the twist kind of came out, which I was like, why is, okay, they don't have much money, but they've still got these servants. Why does he seem to insistently be driving servant away by, one by one? But of course, he needed to get rid of all the other servants to enact his plan. So that I love it when I'm watching a movie and there's something that's bugging me, and then later in the movie I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that works. Yeah, he had a reason for doing that.
Well, and another thing I do like that the Yihua character goes from being so admirable to so despicable over the course of the movie. And the thing that it twists too is that when that rape scene happens, number one, you're horrified because it's like, oh my God, like I don't want this scene to happen. But then after the fact, you're like, wait a second, Mike, if you think about it, what they just did is the mistress and the husband basically just blatantly had sex in front of the wife and tried to frame it as a rape. Do you know what I mean? It's like a really weird sort of it just adds another layer to the relationships in the movie.
Yeah, it takes a messed up scene and makes it messed up in an entirely different way. But
then after the after they after we think the husband is murdered, then there's the haunting, and this is something that is in the original Diabolique as well, except it's a lot more subtle, I would say. But what it results in is Sau Ying dying of fright when the husband shows up in her bed eventually and is pretending to be a ghost. And so then she's put into a coffin, and they have the funeral procession, and then we see we see the servant Yiwa and the husband living as husband and wife in the mansion together, and then that's when the haunting occurs for them. And I want to know what you guys think about this haunting, because then suddenly Sau Ying shows up and is haunting them. And
I just thought it was remarkably quick. I know that they planned the murder of Sau Ying in advance, and that no, she was dead. It's time for them to reap the fruits of their labors. But at the same time, in Chinese culture, it's also seen as improper to for a certain period after there's like a mourning period. You're not supposed to, so it's the fact that they completely just ignored all of that was, given how much importance he seemed to have placed on reputation and face of not divorcing the wife in the beginning of the movie. It seems a bit strange that they suddenly turned out on the side for Chen Yu and have him not care what people would say or think about that at all.
Well, and didn't they pan from didn't they transition right from the funeral procession to the end of a wedding celebration, basically? Because it shifted to red chairs, right? I assume that was supposed to be the end of their wedding ceremony, and the time elapse was a little bit unclear, but it did seem really like it came right on the heels of it.
Well, we know it wasn't long because we have a scene after that, which is the 7th day with the corpse.
Yeah.
So it's it's been less than a week. We can't pinpoint the exact day, but less than 7 days.
That's true, and her body hasn't even been moved to her hometown yet, right? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. It's still at the funeral home.
And and so then there's so then we get all these scenes of them bringing in different spiritual people to cleanse the place, and and then there's this guy named Choi who we saw earlier in the movie, and he's there for an important reason, because the wife gives the madam of the house gives him a letter that becomes important later on, but he sees the jade bracelet on Yiwa, and he immediately accuses her of killing the wife, and then Chun Yu beats him nearly to death, tries to bury him, and then ends up having to chase him through the house before he kills him. And so I want to talk about what ultimately happens with Chun Yu, but I was just curious what people thought of the Choi scene and just sort of the build up of the haunting and the attempts to eliminate the haunting through Taoist magic and then Buddhist and then ultimately some kind of black ritual, which we'll talk about at the end.
So just talk about the Choi scene. The classic movie thing of having a cat jump out all the time. This, instead of having a cat, there's a turtle. That was just such a bizarre thing, right? It's the one on the roof. The roof was when it really went over the top. It's what's going on with these turtles?
It's very. I gotta say, that it was very sort of Chinese slapstick, I guess. There.
Yeah.
As well. It wasn't quite as bad as the builder scene. The builder scene I felt was not only drawn out, but completely over the top here. Here it was it was still believable, kind of. I mean, you don't want turtles. I've had terrapins in the past, and God, do they smell? So having one of them crawling under your nose and threatening to bite your lips or whatever is a pretty scary thing.
Dire threat. Yeah. I like the turtles, by the way. I thought it was effectively funny as a comedic kind of beat in the movie, even though it was very strange, and I did like it.
I don't know, for you guys, you might have seen more movies in this time period. Was it common to break up horror movies with comedic scenes like this? Because I just, from my sort of point of view, I feel the scene would have worked better if, it could still keep the turtles, but it would have been more intent. Like it could have been the directing, the way the director framed the scene or had the actors act. Could have been a bit more tense rather than
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of movies did sort of, like a lot of, especially like Hong Kong movies that I've seen, a lot of them did, by the 80s at least, start to really shift back and forth between humor and seriousness. But also, when I think of like American movies, you see that a lot too. Like Return of the Living Dead is filled with comedy, but also genuinely like, you know, it's like a serious horror movie at the same time in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of films in the 80s that kind of dip into corniness now and then. And so... but I think the thing that makes it different here is it feels like it's so serious most of the time, and then when it does touch into comedy, it just you notice it because it just feels a little bit out of place.
In American movies, there are plenty of '80s horror movies with comedy in them. That few of those movies go to the level of seriousness. Like the first act of this movie is basically straight kind of psychological drama, pretty much. So it makes it a little stranger.
Though I guess I would say a lot of like the Friday the 13th movies kind of do that, where they're really, really serious, and then you have these goofy scenes in them that it kind of are contrast.
I mean, I suppose so. I guess I don't consider. I mean, a lot of the Friday the 13th movies really aren't that great movies. So, it's like
them's fighting words, Adam. Them's fighting words.
They are fighting words. But I feel like they're not serious in the same way that this movie is serious. I mean, they're serious in the sense you're not supposed to laugh, but they're not serious in the way that this movie is playing for drama in a lot of ways. The Friday the 13th movies don't often go for drama.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But yeah. So, go ahead.
I was saying that while we're sort of talking about this part of the movie, that and you guys mentioned Evil, like Night of the Living Dead, but this was a different movie, right? The Evil Dead, was it the one with the hand?
Evil Dead 2 had the hand, and I thought, I bet Sam Raimi watched this because there was just a couple beats about it. The hand coming around the corner and grabbing him by the neck was just so Evil Dead 2. I was like, man, I can't believe there. I feel like Sam Raimi must have seen this movie. Yeah, that was very, very.
And the Addams Family too had the hand.
It did, but it was. There was just something very Evil Dead 2 about the use of the hand.
No, I would agree. I would agree, and especially too with that paired with the fact that at that point in the movie, Chun-Yu is wandering around with that cleaver that he's sharpening all the time. Do you know what I mean? It just adds like an Evil Dead element to it when he's grizzled and he's sharpening it in the background, and But all right, I think we're already at the 23-minute mark, so I really want to talk about the dance ritual scene, which Kenny had mentioned at the beginning, because it's got to be like the most famous part of the movie. So just so for people who haven't seen it, after she goes to the Taoist and the Buddhist, and then she ultimately hires this lady magician who has an assistant, and the assistant essentially does like an exotic dance routine where she's supposed to be inhabited by the spirit of Sau Ying, and the magician lady is summoning like the gods and the king of hell to drive her away. But it's basically like a striptease, except she's got all kinds of elaborate characters written on her body, and she's got these long nail things, and there's quite a few other things that happen. What was your reaction to the scene?
It was a full is it 8 or 9 minutes, or even 10? Okay, this was around 10 minutes for sake of simplicity. Like a full 10-minute striptease scene, basically, of a naked woman gyrating to weird synth music.
I think the length of the scene is what really makes it so striking, because you could have something like this in a movie, and it would normally be sort of dealt with in a matter of maybe under a minute. But it goes on so long that it's like, I mean, you feel like you're at a strip club. It's like that's what's there for like 10 minutes, and the camera doesn't flinch, it doesn't hide anything, and it sort of fully commits to this idea of we're going to blend like black magic ritual and erotic dance routine together somehow.
Yeah, it was because I know it's like you say, it was very overt. Like there's been nudity in other movies we've reviewed before, but it's usually very fleeting, or it's like, maybe just the breasts or something like that.
Yeah.
This was just like boom, really like full frontal nudity for 10 minutes.
And I gotta say, like, I have not seen any other Hong Kong movies where they've shown the lower half in quite similar. Like, they didn't zoom in or anything here, of course, but they didn't hide anything. Like, everything was visible. Like,
there are other movies that do this before this period.
Yeah, okay. Because it was just a bit shocking for me. Yeah, I was like, oh, top half. Yeah, okay, that's commonplace. I don't place any stock in that anymore. But then the bottom half stuff is just like, okay, maybe I'm just showing my innocence here, but I have never seen another Chinese movie with.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan has it, and I don't know, did Killer Clans? I don't know, maybe they didn't show that part, but I've seen other movies that do. There's definitely like a style, and I think Kuei Chih-Hung probably directed many of them. He's directed a lot of movies, and what's the I'm trying to remember the name of the one that I'm pretty sure would have been on the list. If it comes to me, I'll bring it up. But yeah, no, it definitely is something that you see in movies, and especially by the late 80s and 90s, you will see stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It was, and then not only that. So you have that scene, and then you have the actress that plays Yi Hua. Also, they shave her head, and then they put characters all over her body. And I mean, she doesn't do anything like the other lady did, but it still kind of continues into that sort of territory. But I think it's visually striking, the look that they give her at the end with the bald head and the Taoist symbol on her head, and then like all the characters written all over her body. It looks really cool.
I got a question about that actually, because from what I remember from that scene, at no point did they really show her face and the body. Like the only time like they were showing the full body thing, her head was cut out of the scene. So I'm not sure if it was actually the actress for Yi Hua.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah. I noticed the same thing. I'm pretty sure it was a body double.
When they panned out from a distance and you saw her, but it was far away enough that you couldn't see the face clearly, so I don't know if it was the same. So either way, though, it wasn't as bad as the Black Magic body doubling, where
no, it was well done. It's just but it was yeah, I mean, the thing, getting back into it from a plot perspective, I mean, it seemed to me like that whole thing was just part of the revenge. It's like, how much can we humiliate her just to leave her in this terrible, terrible state? I felt like the person conducting the ritual was basically in on it with the twin sister, and this was just part of the revenge operation. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But
I think it's plausible. I think that's plausible because as soon as that ritual is over, she says, now, no matter what, like, just keep reciting the prayer. And then she goes out the door, and I think she looks at the money, and she's like, gone. And she runs away. So you can tell either she's a charlatan or she's in on it. It's one of the two, I think.
Or both.
Or both, yeah. I mean, I guess both are possible.
If she's in on it, she's a charlatan. So it goes without saying she's a charlatan.
But that's what leads to the reveal that the haunting was all done by Sau Feng, who is Sau Ying's twin sister, who received the letter that was given to Choi to send back to her hometown to say that she was ill, and she came back and she actually saw the husband frightening her to death in the bed, and then she learned about the conspiracy, and so then she plotted the revenge, and she explains how she conducted most of the major, points of it. And then we see Yi Hua desperately reciting these prayers, and Sau Ying's sister, rips off her ears. And it's a really. I
gotta say that's some impressive grip strength, and like, she must like train her traps really well. Like she literally ripped off someone's ears. I'm like, that's I know.
Well, Well, what it allows for is that final scene where Yiwa is left as like a lunatic, just kind of wandering the mansion, and she's got no ears, and there's something about that seems, I don't know, the imagery of devastation at the end of the movie is very effective, I think.
Yeah, that's that's part of what leads me to the idea that the whole ritual thing was part of the setup. That was but yeah, it's jumping back in the movie. I was talking about things that seemed wrong to me at the time that made sense later. When after they've killed the husband, when they go down to the lake the first time, the next morning, and the fishermen are out there and they're like, oh, we haven't seen your husband in a while, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, no, he's sick. He's at home. And I'm like, what? You should say he didn't come home last night. Why did you've been given the perfect setup. And then when they find the body, I was like, that's why is she saying that? She's just making things harder on them. Then you find out, oh, okay, she doesn't want anyone to think he's dead. So that was another point where I thought the movie did something really weird, and it all made sense for me.
Yeah, no, I really like, and again in the original Diabolique, it's a pool, if I remember, and I think the pond setting allows for a lot more scary opportunities. Here. But yeah, so. I guess some of the stuff I also want to talk about. What did you guys think of the makeup for Sau Ying as a ghost when she was supposed to be haunting the place? Because all they really did was they kind of made her face pale and they gave her like aqua blue eyes, and I think that was about it. I was wondering how effective you thought that was.
I think it was okay. Like, I didn't really expect that much from them in terms of like special effects. Like, given, at the end of the movie, when you think back and we know that this is actually Sao Fong pretending to be a ghost. Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's probably why the disguises weren't really that great. I don't know if they probably didn't have contact lenses back in the Qing dynasty, so I don't know how they managed to do the whole blue eye thing.
Well, so here's the thing, that's actually in the original Diabolique, that was made like what, in 1953 or something. It's pretty old, right?
That's 1953 sounds right.
Yeah, it's black and white. It's an old French movie, and in that one, the guy had contacts that he put in his eyes to make it look like he had died. It wasn't aqua blue like hers. So I don't know at what point, like,
it's pretty ambiguous when this movie takes place. It's modern-ish, but it's not. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, and we know it is in the past because I think they said at that time marriages were still influenced by the feudal system in the introduction.
That's true. There is that. I don't know where that would place it.
But then one strange thing is I remember when Sau Ying was having issues sleeping and Yiwa sleeps next to her in the bed. When she wakes up in the morning, she turns the lamp off like it was an electric lamp.
Okay, I didn't notice that, but that's possible.
I thought it was a gas lamp myself.
Gas?
But,
okay, that would make more sense because I sort of. I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering the scene wrong, but I seem to remember her like pulling on a rope and it sort of makes a clicking noise.
Like I said, I'm not 100% sure on my memory of this. I thought I saw her kind of turn a thing like you would on a gas lamp, but I would. It's entirely possible I'm wrong.
And also, like this is like house number 13. Did they number houses back in those days? I don't know if that was like a thing or a street name, sure, but I don't remember like house numbers being a thing. You don't say you live at number 4 Privet Drive or whatever, right?
Yeah, I saw another thing too. You're saying that makes it ambiguous when it takes place. Like you said, this could be a translation thing, but what they said was this was a time when marriages were influenced by the feudal system, which means that it doesn't mean the feudal system was in place, but it means that there were still people that,
for sure.
It could be you know, relatively close to modern day. But I don't know if that would stretch to the 50s though. But,
Yeah, all I meant was that it just indicated it was in the past at some point, but we don't really have a
Yeah,
firm
it's definitely in the past. It's not like present day or or even
it wasn't
the
1980s.
80s. Yeah, it was 1980s.
But yeah, so the other thing I did want to talk about is just comparing this, and I know Kenny, you haven't seen Diabolique, so you won't have the point of reference, but just comparing it to the original. Adam, what did you think in terms of how they compare to each other, if you remember enough of the original?
I haven't seen it in 20 years, so I don't want to get too deep into the into the comparisons. I mean, I didn't know early on that it was kind of a riff on Diabolique, which is good because that would have given a lot away. So, it took me a while to kind of catch on to any resemblance there. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's been too long since I've seen the original for me to want to weigh in on that.
That's fair.
I will say, amazing. The surprising fact here is that contact lenses were invented in 1887. So
oh, okay.
I would not have guessed that.
But so I guess some of the big differences between them. Number one, Diabolique is a lot more slow paced. His movie in the 50s, it's gonna be, but also it really emphasizes the sort of the suspense and the drama, and all the haunting stuff kind of happens at the tail end of the movie. And there are a few big key differences. Diabolique occurs in like some kind of like school where the husband is the headmaster and she's the headmistress, and he's having an open affair with another woman who also is at the school, and it's not like hidden at all. And so the whole arrangement here where she goes as a servant and deceives the wife is totally different. And I think that kind of adds something to the movie. It makes the twist that much more surprising.
Yeah, I agree. I think that element definitely is played better, making a total surprise. It's interesting how abrupt, how abrupt the transition is when we suddenly jump to her funeral and the husband is overseeing the funeral. And that took me a minute. I was just like, wait, was some of this a dream? Like, what was going on? It took me a couple of seconds to recalibrate before I figured out what was going on there. When we had the scene, then when we go to the next scene with them talking after the wedding, I'm like, oh, okay, it all fell together. But yeah, I was very confused.
Yeah, it took me a few seconds as well because it was, like you say, it was quite abrupt. And even after the scene where the husband is finally killed, the scene change there was quite abrupt as well. I wasn't really sure if that was like a dream sequence or whether that actually happened. And I think it's fine.
It wasn't really a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind being confused for about a minute in a movie. I mean, if I'm confused for most of the movie, it's a problem. But I wouldn't really consider it a fault of the movie, but it kind of forced me to think there and to figure out what was going on, which is fine.
Well, I think one of the things about this movie that I think it's an example of is a film that sort of presents something as being supernatural and then undermines that by the end of the film and does a really good job of it. Because usually I find when movies do that, it's often cheap. It's often like it feels like you've been tricked, and it's not really. Well, oh, go ahead.
So, yeah, no, I agree. I mentioned earlier how so much.
We got the lag on Adam's end.
Yeah, sounds like Adam is. Adam, you're lagging. Can you repeat that? Oh. Okay, it looks like we're having a little trouble hearing Adam. I'm going to speak until Adam resumes with us. By the way, it's House of the Bamboo Dolls is the movie that I was thinking of that Kuei Chih-Hung directed.
Okay.
Adam, can you hear us now? Kind of.
No, I think I think it is.
I think you've come back now. I think you're back with us.
Guess not.
Okay, now you're back.
Yeah, Adam, I think you're back. Okay, you know what? We should just assume for a little while that the technical difficulty will continue. Adam, when you feel like it hasn't, jump in. But I don't know. I feel like this is a really good example of a movie that does just a good job of feigning supernatural and having a more practical explanation at the end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we did touch on it earlier a little bit. There were some scenes which didn't really seem.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can kind of hear you, Adam.
You're still very laggy and breaking up a bit.
Hey, Adam, how about this?
You guys talk about something else and we'll come back.
Okay.
So,
I think he's going to jump in and out of the call is what he's saying. So I'm sorry, what were you saying, Kenny?
Oh yeah, we mentioned earlier about some of the haunting stuff, like where it seemed a bit too fantastical to be something that could be simulated by a twin pretending to be a ghost. The mirror scene was one of them. Like the only explanation I could think of was that the cross-eyed thing was supposed to be some sort of hindrance to him having a clear view of her in the mirror, which doesn't really make any sense, but possible. And some of the face behind the window things, and I don't know basically I'm thinking like Sau Ying must be a ninja if she can get in and out of the house like that, without being really detected so much and being able to escape at the drop of a hat.
It does sort of require a lot. It is interesting that you say she's like a ninja, because I always felt that in hindsight, when you think back to the haunting, it becomes more like a Commando scene, in that she's like, she's literally running around the house, like kicking him down the stairs and, like planting all this evidence and doing things to dispatch with people. Adam, can you hear us okay now?
I can right now, yeah. Are you hearing me all right?
We hear you fine. Do you want to repeat what you said when you were cut off, which was we were talking about the supernatural being undermined by the plausible explanation.
Yeah, what my point was that I think, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the movie, so much of the movie seemed to seemed to be a straight psychological thriller. The supernatural stuff didn't come until later. So that meant there was already kind of a grounding, but when it jumped back to not being supernatural, it didn't feel like it had been undermining everything that had been happening the entire movie.
Okay, yeah, and it kind of does it twice, because it starts out where it's all sort of drama and everything, and then you have the haunting, and then it very quickly tells you, the haunting wasn't real, it was just a ploy. But then you have a new haunting, and you kind of should already be on your guard, because they just showed you a haunting that wasn't real, but you still fall for it somehow, and and we know how, because of some of the scenes that Kenny and I were just discussing with the mirror and things that seem a little bit like they would be real hauntings. But
it's just you expect in a horror movie that real supernatural stuff is going to show up at some time too. Yeah. It's just genre convention.
But it's just a very stunning movie for that reason, because it goes through all that, and then it builds up to the weird scene that we're talking about earlier, and then the woman gets her ears ripped off, and there's that sort of epilogue with the twin sister, which I really like, because in the original, the twins, there's no twin sister. There's just this, one of the kids says that he saw the headmistress and she gave him something, and then he wanders off, and then it like fades to black, I think, or it does like the little thing where the circle. Remember in the old movies how the circle would kind of shroud the character? It does that sort of thing. And you're just left to wonder, well, what does that mean? And so here I like it because I feel like Kuei Chih-Hung provides an answer. that's very concrete and interesting.
I prefer the ambiguity a little bit myself, but I didn't dislike this ending, but I feel like it, having her just explain, okay, here, audience, here's everything that just happened. Let me tell you what was really going on.
Oh,
we're back to the.
I will say this. I agree that the exposition is.
It was fine.
I think we're Adam. We're losing you again. So to continue the thought, I do think that the exposition was a little bit heavy.
I'm hearing you fine.
You're coming in very, very spectral sounding, which I guess is appropriate.
Haunted?
Yeah, the ghost of Kuei Chih-Hung is
conspired to murder someone's tuberculosis, right?
Go on, just keep going.
So, but anyways, I think that I take Adam's point. I think that the exposition was a little bit quirky at the end, but I do like the detail of it being the twin sister, and I like that it sort of builds on Diabolique, which already had an ending that was ambiguous, and then so he kind of makes that the second half of the movie, really. But yeah, so I don't know any. Well, first off, Adam. So Adam, can you hear us okay now?
I'm.
All right. It sounds like he's still having some technical difficulties.
I can hear you guys.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's go around the room. We're towards the end of this, anyways. So, Kenny, what's your overall assessment of this one?
I would definitely recommend it. I'd just say, like, if you're expecting, a very tense horror, the comedic moments break that apart a bit too much for me. Like, I still think the movie was very good and the plot was enjoyable, and we got a 10-minute striptease. I mean, I can't really complain about that, can I? So, I don't know if I could just recommend this to anyone though. Like, I feel like you have to be in a very either specific sort of mood or mindset to properly appreciate the movie, and it's definitely something you'd want to go into blind. If you're listening to this for recommendations already, you've already basically ruined the various plot twists in the movie for you. So it's gonna take away a layer of the enjoyment if you go and watch it now. But if you have seen it already, you'll probably appreciate what we're saying. And when I say that, this is a movie that it pleasantly surprised me for the story and both the horror aspects of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say something similar. I mean, I really like this film, and I do think people should watch it. But obviously, if they're listening this far in, they probably have already made a decision about whether they're going to watch it or not. It's totally worth seeing. And I think if you did see it and you liked it, I would highly recommend other Kuei Chih-Hung movies. I think The Killer Snakes is one of my favorites, and it's one of my favorites because it's got like a Taxi Driver vibe to it, but it's also got these killer snakes and this just it's sort of a really good blending of that sort of character study with horror. But I'd also recommend Boxer's Omen, which is a classic and very disgusting. If you don't eat it, don't watch it when you're planning on eating. And another one that I really like that gets into some weird territory but does it in an interesting way is a movie called Corpse Mania, which I'll just so people know what they're getting into if they watch it. It does delve into the topic of necrophilia, so it's like much more intense than this movie. But it's still done in a similar manner in terms of how he shoots things and how he achieves atmosphere, and it's actually quite a good film. And another one that's maybe not quite as scary or horror focused is a film called Killer Constable, which is very much worth watching. But again, I would recommend this movie and other Kuei Chih-Hung films. Part of the point of watching a Kuei Chih-Hung movie is the escalation, and so the reason that final scene at the end of this is so good is because he's just diving as fully as he can into that sort of crossing of the line as a director, where like we said, normally a movie's only going to show that kind of a scene for a minute. And he's like, no, we're going to do this for 10, maybe even 15 minutes. And I think that it's something that sets a lot of his movies apart, is kind of that, just that intense dive into territory that a lot of other movies won't go into, or will just dip their toes into. And it looks like we lost Adam, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to get Adam's final thoughts on it. But again, the name of the movie is Hex. It was made in 1980. It's a Kuei Chih-Hung film, and it stars Tanny Tien, Wang Yong, and Chan Sze-Kai as Yi Hua. And it's available on Prime, but you have to rent it, so you can't just stream it on Prime. You have to go and pay like $3 to watch it. So next week we'll be back with Oily Maniac, which we're looking forward to talking about. And until then, we will talk to you later.